The throne room of Prime was built to make visitors feel small. Giant pillars of black stone rose toward a ceiling so high it disappeared into shadow. Blue flames burned in floating bowls, casting strange light across the polished floor. Hundreds of nobles stood along the walls, their scales shimmering like oil on water as they watched the doors at the far end of the hall. High Admiral sat upon her command throne, a seat carved from the bones of a space creature her ancestors had killed 1,000 years ago. She was tall, even for her kind. Her scales were deep purple, almost black, and her eyes glowed with a soft golden light. 3 ceremonial blades hung at her belt. Each one had tasted the blood of an enemy commander. Today, she was meeting a human. The doors opened and a single figure walked into the throne room. He was not impressive to look at. He stood shorter than most. His skin was soft and brown, marked with lines of age around his eyes. He wore a simple uniform with a few medals on his chest. His hair was and cut short. He walked with the slow, steady pace of someone who had seen many years and many battles. Commander of the United Nations, Navy stopped at the proper distance from the throne and gave a small bow. The nobles whispered among themselves, was this a joke? The humans had sent one man, one old man. Let the silence stretch. She wanted him to feel uncomfortable. She wanted him to understand his place. So, she finally said, her voice filling the massive room, the humans sent a single commander to negotiate with the hegemony. One ship, one man, no fleet, no ambassadors, no gifts. She leaned forward on her throne. Do your leaders not understand who we are? His expression did not change. His eyes met hers without fear, without anger, just patience. The United Nations sends its respect, Admiral, he said. His voice was calm and even. We do not measure respect in numbers. We hoped one honest voice would be enough. Laughter erupted from the nobles, raised one clawed hand, and the laughter stopped instantly. Honest, she repeated, tasting the word like something sour. Let me be honest with you, human. Your species discovered faster-than-light travel less than 300 years ago. 300 years. My people ruled these stars when your ancestors were still learning to make fire. We have conquered 40 systems. We have broken empires that existed for 10,000 years. And you come here asking for military passage through our sovereign space as if you are our equals. Remain still. We ask only for passage, Admiral. Our colony on is under threat from raiders. We need the shortest route to defend our people. We offer fair trade agreements in return. Stood from her throne. She was nearly 2 meters tall, and her ceremonial armor made her look even larger. She walked down the steps slowly, each footfall echoing in the silent hall. The nobles watched with excited eyes. They knew what was coming. She stopped directly in front of him. He had to look up to meet her eyes. She could smell his biology, strange and alien. Mammals, warm-blooded creatures from a small blue world. How had such weak things ever reached the stars? Let me tell you something about the galaxy, Commander, she said softly, so only he could hear. The strong survive. The weak serve or die. Your species is young and weak. You have no great fleets. You have no ancient weapons. You have nothing but your strange stubbornness and your foolish hope. She drew one of her ceremonial blades. The metal sang as it left the sheath. She pressed the flat of the blade against his shoulder, then slowly moved it up until the edge rested against his throat. The nobles gasped with delight. Did not move, his eyes never left hers. His heartbeat remained steady. She could sense these things, all could. This confused her. If your primitive vessel moves 1 meter outside its approved corridor, she whispered, I will destroy it. If your people ever challenge my authority again, I will bring fire to your colonies. I will turn you into ash. I will make your species a memory, a warning to others who forget their place. Do you understand me, human? Was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice still calm, still patient. I understand you, Admiral. She pressed the blade slightly harder. A thin line of red appeared on his neck. You are not afraid, she observed. Why? Fear is a choice, he said simply. I choose not to make it. She stared at him for several seconds. Then she pulled the blade away and sheathed it with a sharp motion. She turned her back on him, a deliberate insult in culture. Your request for passage is, she announced loudly. Take your ship and leave our space within 6 hours. If you are seen here again, you will be destroyed without warning. Bent down and picked up the treaty documents that had been thrown on the floor during the display. He straightened them carefully, placed them in his bag, and bowed once more. Thank you for your time, Admiral. He turned and walked toward the doors. He did not hurry, he did not look back. The nobles exploded with laughter as soon as the doors closed behind him. They mocked his size, his age, his soft skin, his calm words. They joked about how quickly human ships would burn if they ever dared return. Return to her throne, but she did not laugh. She watched the doors for a long time after the human had gone. Something about his eyes stayed with her. Something about the way he had stood there, bleeding, without a single tremor in his voice. She had threatened countless enemies in this room. Warlords, admirals, kings, they had all shown fear. They had all begged or bargained or raged. The human had done none of these things. He had simply looked at her and accepted her words like rain falling on stone. It meant nothing, she told herself. Humans were nothing, a young species with delusions of importance. In 1,000 years, the galaxy would barely remember they existed. She pushed the thought away and returned to her duties. Outside, in the cold of space, the UNS Perseverance turned slowly and began its journey out of territory. Commander sat alone in his quarters, pressing a small bandage to his neck. He looked out the viewport at the stars. Someday, he said quietly to himself, they will understand. He did not know that someday would come much sooner than anyone expected. 3 days passed without incident. The UNS Perseverance traveled slowly through neutral space, following the long route around territory. Commander spent his time reviewing reports, maintaining his ship, and thinking about the meeting with Admiral. He did not hate her. He understood her. The galaxy was full of old species who had forgotten what it meant to struggle, to grow, to fight for survival against impossible odds. They measured power in ships and weapons and years. They had never learned that true strength came from somewhere deeper. Humans knew this. They had learned it through centuries of war with each other, through plagues and famines and disasters that should have destroyed them. They had looked into the darkness again and again, and they had refused to stop moving forward. But explaining this to others was difficult. Words were not enough. Sometimes only actions could teach. Was eating a simple dinner in his small cabin when the emergency alarm began to scream. He dropped his food and ran to the bridge. His crew of 47 was already at their stations, their faces tight with fear. On the main screen, something impossible was happening. Space itself was tearing open. A massive hole had appeared near Prime, burning with strange purple light. And from this hole, ships were pouring out like water from a broken dam. Black ships, dead ships, ships that looked like they had been built from the corpses of other vessels. Knew what they were, everyone in the galaxy knew. The Void Collective had come. The Void Collective was not a species. It was a machine intelligence, a hunger given form. No one knew where it came from or how old it was. They only knew what it did. It arrived in a system, consumed everything alive, turned the dead into more machines, and moved on. 17 civilizations had already fallen to the collective. Entire species had been erased from existence. And now, hundreds of thousands of collective ships were descending on Prime. Watch the numbers climb on his tactical display. 100,000 ships, 200,000, 300,000. The sensors could not keep up. There were too many. Sir, his first officer said, her voice shaking, we need to leave. Now, we can make the jump to neutral space before they notice us. Did not answer. He was watching the defense fleet engage the enemy. The hegemony had powerful ships, massive dreadnoughts with weapons that could crack planets, carriers filled with thousands of fighters, defense platforms that had protected this system for centuries. The battle lasted 11 minutes. Watched as the flagship, a vessel 5 kilometers long, was torn apart by a swarm of collective drones. He watched fighters disappear into clouds of black metal and never emerge. He watched the proud fleet of the hegemony die, ship by ship, while the collective did not even slow down. The enemy reached the planet's orbital defense stations. These lasted 3 minutes. Then the collective began landing on Prime itself. His communication officer looked up with wide eyes. Sir, we're receiving distress calls, thousands of them, from the planet, from escaped ships, from everywhere. The bridge was silent, except for the sound of screaming coming through the speakers. Millions of voices crying for help that would never come. Sir, the first officer said again, more urgently, we have to go, we cannot fight that. No one can fight that. Stood at the center of his bridge, his hands clasped behind his back. He looked at the main screen, at the black tide consuming a world that had threatened to destroy his entire species just 3 days ago. He thought about Admiral, He thought about the blade at his throat. He thought about her words, her contempt, her certainty that humans were nothing. He thought about the 4 billion people on that planet who were going to die. "No," he said quietly. "Sir, we are not leaving." He turned to face his crew. Their faces showed confusion, fear, disbelief. "They are not our friends. They do not like us. They have promised to destroy us if we ever return to their space." He paused. "None of that matters right now. Right now there are billions of innocent people dying, and we are here." His weapons officer, a young woman named Sarah Park, spoke up. "Commander, with respect, what can we do? We are one destroyer. They have 300,000 ships." Smiled. It was a sad smile, but there was something else in it. Something that looked almost like peace. "We can do what humans have always done, Lieutenant. We can refuse to give up. We can fight when fighting is impossible. We can buy time that cannot be bought." He sat down in his command chair. "Open a channel to the planet." The communication officer's hands trembled as he made the connection. "Prime, this is Commander of the UNS Perseverance. I know you are receiving this. Admiral, if you can hear me, I need you to get your remaining civilians to the strongest shelter you have. The northern mountain bunkers, if they still stand. I am going to try to buy you time." Static filled the channel. Then through the noise, voice emerged. She sounded broken, lost. "Human, you are still here. Why did you not run?" "Because someone has to stay, Admiral, and I am here." "You cannot fight them. You will die." Looked at his crew. They were afraid. Of course they were afraid. But they were not running. They had heard his words and they had chosen to stay with him. "Probably," he admitted. "But I have to try. Please, Admiral, get your people to safety. Give me something to fight for." The channel went silent, then very quietly spoke again. "The northern bunkers are still intact. I am ordering all survivors to move there now." Good leaned forward. "Now watch, Admiral. Let me show you what humans do when everything is lost." He closed the channel and turned to his crew. "All hands, battle stations. Charge the main reactor to 120%. Prepare the protocol." His first officer went pale. "Sir, the protocol is theoretical. It has never been tested. The chances of survival are—" "I know the chances," interrupted gently. "But we are not fighting to survive, Commander. We are fighting to save them, set the course, take us into the heart of the enemy fleet." The UNS Perseverance turned toward the 300,000 ships of the Void Collective. One small destroyer against an endless swarm. It should have been suicide. It should have been meaningless. But nothing is meaningless when someone refuses to look away. Admiral stood in the command center of her underground bunker, watching the battle on screens that flickered with each explosion above. Her scales had lost their shine. Her golden eyes were dim with exhaustion and grief. Around her, the surviving members of her command staff sat in silence, waiting for death. They had failed. The greatest military power in 40 systems had crumbled in less than an hour. The pride of the hegemony was now scattered, debris floating in orbit. All that remained was hiding, and hoping the collective would miss them. But the collective never missed anything. Everyone knew that. So when the human ship began its charge into the enemy fleet, expected to watch another quick death. One more flash of fire, one more pointless sacrifice. She was wrong. The UNS Perseverance did not fly like a normal ship. It moved in patterns that made no sense, spinning and diving and accelerating at angles that should have torn it apart. And as it moved, something strange happened to space around it. The ship's reactor, pushed far beyond safe limits, was generating a controlled singularity. A tiny black hole, held in place by fields that human scientists had only invented 10 years ago. The singularity bent space and time around the Perseverance, creating ripples that threw off enemy targeting systems. But that was only the beginning. Had studied the Void Collective for years. Everyone had after the first civilizations fell. The collective was powerful, but it had a weakness. It was a hive mind, a single intelligence controlling millions of ships. This made it fast and coordinated, but it also meant it could not understand chaos. It could not predict madness. So gave it madness. He flew his ship in patterns no computer would ever calculate. He made decisions based on instinct, on feeling, on the strange human ability to choose randomly when logic failed. Left, then right, then up, then backward. He fired weapons at empty space, then jumped to the spot where the enemy had moved to avoid the shots. The collective's predictive algorithms broke down. Its ships crashed into each other trying to follow the Perseverance. Its beautiful coordination became confusion. And wherever flew, he left destruction behind. The protocol was a human secret, developed after the fall of the third civilization to the collective. It turned a ship's reactor into a weapon of last resort. Each time the Perseverance made a short-range jump, it left behind a collapsing gravity well. These wells were small, lasting only seconds, but they were hungry. Anything caught inside was crushed into nothing. Made hundreds of jumps in the first hour. Watched in disbelief as collective ships vanished by the dozens, by the hundreds. The black swarm tried to surround the human vessel, to predict its movements, to overwhelm it with numbers. But was always somewhere else, always one step ahead, always leaving death in his wake. Her tactical officer, a young male who had lost his entire family in the initial attack, spoke without looking away from the screen. "That is not possible," he said quietly. "No pilot can fly like that, no ship can survive those stresses." "And yet," replied, "he does." The battle continued, hour after hour. The Perseverance took damage, could see the hull breaches, the venting atmosphere, the sections of the ship that simply stopped responding. But it kept moving, it kept fighting. At the 4-hour mark, the collective did something it had never done before. It retreated. Not fully, not from the system, but from the area around the human ship. A sphere of empty space formed as thousands of collective vessels pulled back, trying to analyze, trying to understand. Use the pause to make a communication. His face appeared on screen. He looked terrible. Burns covered half his face. One eye was swollen shut. Blood ran from a cut on his forehead. Behind him, his bridge was filled with smoke and sparks. "Admiral," he said, his voice rough but steady, "how are the evacuations going?" Could not speak for a moment. She had threatened to kill this man. She had pressed a blade to his throat and promised to turn his world to ash. And now he was dying for her people. "The bunkers are holding," she finally managed. "Most of the civilian population is inside, but the collective is still landing ground forces. They are breaking through our outer defenses." Nodded slowly. "I need another 2 hours. Can your bunkers hold that long?" I do not know, perhaps, but you cannot survive another 2 hours. Your ship is falling apart." The human smiled. It was a broken smile, full of pain, but also something else. Peace, perhaps, acceptance. "We will see," he said. "My crew is down to 12. The ship's computer failed an hour ago. I am flying by hand now." He paused. "But we are still here, Admiral, and we will stay until the job is done." The channel closed. Watched as the Perseverance charged back into the collective swarm. She watched as the impossible dance continued, as gravity wells bloomed and died, as machines that had devoured civilizations were torn apart by one small ship and one old man. She thought about her words in the throne room. Young and weak, she had called them. Insects, mud creatures. She had been so blind. The battle entered its 5th hour. The Perseverance was barely a ship anymore. It was more hull than hull, more fire than metal. But it kept moving, it kept jumping, it kept killing. And somewhere in that wreck, Commander sat in his command chair, hands steady on the controls, flying the most important flight in human history. He did not think about glory. He did not think about revenge. He thought about the 4 billion souls in those bunkers. He thought about the children hiding in the dark, waiting for the monsters to find them. He would not let the monsters win. At the 6-hour mark, the Void Collective did something it had never done in its entire existence. It ran. The remaining ships, less than half of the original fleet, turned and fled toward the dimensional rift they had entered from. They did not stop to collect resources. They did not try to finish the conquest. They simply left, their hive mind finally understanding that this battle could not be won, that this enemy could not be predicted, that staying meant death. The rift closed behind them. Prime was saved. And in orbit, the broken shell of the UNS Perseverance hung motionless, surrounded by the corpses of 40,000 collective ships it had destroyed single-handedly. On the bridge, Commander finally let go of the controls. He had done it. Now at last he could rest. The first rescue ships reached the Perseverance within 20 minutes of the collective's retreat, was on the lead shuttle herself against the advice of every officer who still lived. She did not care about protocol. She did not care about safety. She had to see. The shuttle approached the human vessel slowly. There was almost nothing left to approach. The ship was a skeleton now, a framework of twisted metal and shattered armor. Whole sections had been torn away. Others were burning, even in the vacuum of space, fed by leaking fuel and oxygen. Life signs demanded. Her pilot checked the sensors. His hands were shaking. 12, Admiral, all in the forward section. They are very weak. 12, the human had said his crew was down to 12 at the 4-hour mark. They had survived. All of them had survived. The shuttle found a docking point that was still intact. Was the first through the airlock, her ceremonial blade at her hip but forgotten. She moved through the ship's corridors, stepping over debris and bodies. Not all of the crew had made it to the forward section. She passed them in the hallways, young humans frozen in death, still at their stations. One had died trying to put out a fire, her hands burned black. Another had been crushed by a falling beam while running to help his. Had seen death before. She had caused death many times, but this was different. These humans had died for a people, for a species that had threatened to destroy them. She found the bridge. The door was jammed, half melted by heat. She tore it open with her bare claws, ignoring the pain as the hot metal cut her scales. Inside, she found them. 11 humans sat or lay on the floor, injured but alive. They looked up at her with exhausted eyes. Some flinched when they saw her species. She could not blame them. In the center of the bridge, still strapped to his command chair, sat Commander. Moved toward him slowly. His eyes were closed. His skin was covered with burns and radiation marks. She could smell the damage the ship's broken shielding had done to his body. Human medicine might have names for it. Her people simply called it the slow death. "Commander," she said softly. His eyes opened. They were clouded now, damaged by the radiation, but he smiled when he recognized her. "Admiral," his voice was a whisper, "did the bunkers hold?" "Yes," she knelt beside him, her claws fumbling with the straps that held him to the chair. "The collective is gone. The survivors are safe. You saved. You saved 4 billion of my people." The straps came free, slumped forward and caught him. He weighed almost nothing. Humans were so fragile, so small. How could they possibly be so strong? "Good," he said. "That is good." She carried him toward the shuttle. Her officers tried to help, but she refused them. This was her burden to bear. "Why?" The question escaped her before she could stop it. "Why did you do this? I threatened you. I threatened your entire species. I pressed my blade to your throat and promised to destroy everything you love. Why would you die for us?" Was quiet for a moment. His breathing was shallow, weak. She could feel his life slipping away with each step. "Because someone had to," he finally said, "and I was here." Did not understand. She could not understand. Her entire culture was built on power, on revenge, on remembering every insult and repaying every wound. The idea of sacrifice for an enemy was madness. "That is not a reason," she insisted. "We have done nothing to earn this. We have given you nothing but contempt." Opened his clouded eyes and looked up at her. Despite everything, despite the pain and the damage and the approaching death, there was kindness in his gaze. "Admiral," he said softly, "we do not help others because they have earned it. We help them because they need it, because helping is right. Because if we only helped people who were kind to us, what kind of people would we be?" She had no answer. The shuttle flew back to the planet in silence, held the entire way. She felt like a child carrying something precious, something she did not deserve. When they landed at the main medical facility, human doctors were already waiting. Word had spread faster than light somehow. Ships from every nearby human colony had changed course for Prime. They came with medicine and supplies and engineering teams. They came to help. The doctors worked alongside the humans, doing everything they could for and his crew. The 11 survivors were treated quickly. They would live, though some would carry scars forever. But was beyond saving. The radiation had done too much damage. His organs were failing one by one. Human technology could slow it. Technology could ease the pain, but nothing could stop what was coming. Stayed at his bedside, she did not eat. She did not sleep. She simply sat and watched, as if her presence could somehow hold death at bay. On the 3rd day, woke for the final time. The room was full of people. His surviving crew, human diplomats who had arrived that morning, nobles who had come to pay their respects. And sitting closest, her scales now dull with exhaustion. Smiled when he saw them all. Quite a crowd, he whispered. Leaned forward. Is there anything you need? Anything we can do? He thought for a moment. Could someone open the window? I would like to see the stars. An officer rushed to obey. The window slid open, revealing the night sky of Prime. The twin moons hung low on the horizon. Beyond them, scattered across the darkness, the stars shone cold and eternal. Looked at them for a long time. Humanity will be fine, he said quietly. We always find a way. He closed his eyes. He did not open them again. The room was silent. Someone was crying, realized it was her. She had not cried since she was a child, centuries ago. She had forgotten that she knew how. The heart monitor made a single, long tone. And Commander, who had saved a world that hated him, was gone. The funeral was held 1 week after Commander's death. It was not a quiet affair. The hegemony insisted on full state honors, the kind usually reserved for their own greatest heroes. When the human government suggested a simple ceremony, refused. He saved our world, she said. He will be honored as a savior of worlds. The ceremony was broadcast across 47 systems. Every species with faster-than-light communication watched. Some had been enemies of for centuries. Some had never heard of humans before this week. All of them watched. The central plaza of Prime had been cleared and cleaned. The damage from the collective's landing forces was still visible on the surrounding buildings, burn marks and broken walls that would take months to repair. But the plaza itself was perfect, filled with millions of standing shoulder to shoulder. Above them, human ships and ships flew in formation, the enemies of last week united in grief. Commander's body lay on a platform in the center of the plaza, dressed in his simple uniform. His medals had been polished, his wounds had been hidden. He looked peaceful, like he was only sleeping. Walked to the podium. She had prepared a speech. She had worked on it for days, writing and rewriting, trying to find the right words. Now, standing before her people and the watching galaxy, she set the paper aside. She would speak from her heart. 1 week ago, she began, I stood in my throne room and threatened to destroy humanity. I called them insects. I called them children. I called them weak. Her voice was steady, but there was no pride in it, only shame. I was a fool. The crowd was silent, continued. We measure power in strange ways in this galaxy. We count ships. We count weapons. We count the years a species has traveled among the stars. By these measures, humanity is young and small. They have no great fleets. They have no ancient technology. They arrived on the galactic stage just yesterday compared to the old empires. She looked down its body. But we forgot to measure what matters. We forgot to count courage. We forgot to count sacrifice. We forgot to count the strength of a heart that refuses to break. She turned back to the crowd. When the Void Collective came, my proud fleet died in 11 minutes. 11 minutes. Centuries of military tradition, billions of credits in warships, the finest officers in 40 systems. 11 minutes. Her claws gripped the podium. And then one human in one old ship fought for 6 hours. He fought until his ship was burning around him. He fought until his crew was dying beside him. He fought until the collective, the machine swarm that has devoured 17 civilizations, turned and ran. The crowd stirred. Some of them had seen the battle footage. Some had only heard the stories, but all of them knew what had happened. I asked him why, said. When we brought him down from his ruined ship, when he was dying in my arms, I asked him why he had sacrificed everything for a people who had shown him nothing but contempt. She paused. He said because someone had to, and I was here. The words hung in the air. I did not understand, admitted. My people do not think this way. We remember every insult. We repay every wound. The idea of sacrificing yourself for an enemy is madness to us. She looked out at the crowd, at the millions of faces watching her. But perhaps we are wrong. Perhaps we have been wrong for a very long time. She stepped away from the podium and walked to where Spotty lay. She drew her ceremonial blade, the same one she had pressed to his throat just days ago. In the old tradition of my people, she announced, when a warrior saves your life, you owe them a blood debt. This debt is paid by service, by protection, by loyalty unto death. She brought the blade to her own palm and cut. Purple blood dripped onto the white platform. I, High Admiral of the Hegemony, declare a blood debt to humanity. This debt will never be repaid. From this day until the last star dies, my people will stand beside the human race. Their enemies are our enemies. Their friends are our friends. Their struggles are our struggles. She sheathed the blade. This is the least we can do. It is not enough. It will never be enough, but it is a beginning. The ceremony continued. Other speakers came forward. Human diplomats, nobles, military commanders from a dozen species who had come to pay their respects. They all said different things in different ways, but the message was the same. Humanity had proven something that day, not just but to the entire galaxy. In the weeks that followed, 17 different species sent formal requests for alliance with the United Nations of Earth. Trade agreements were signed. Military partnerships were formed. Borders that had been closed for centuries opened overnight. The Void Collective, damaged and confused by its defeat, retreated to the far edges of known space. It would return someday, everyone knew. But now the galaxy would be ready. Now the galaxy would stand together. And in the central plaza of Prime, a statue was built. It showed a human man in a simple uniform standing alone, facing an unseen enemy. His face was calm. His posture was steady. His eyes looked toward the stars. The inscription at the base was simple. Had chosen the words herself, taken from what had told her in his final moments. It read he was here, so he stayed. Humans came from across the galaxy to see it. They stood before the statue and read the inscription and tried to explain to their children what it meant. Some cried, some smiled, all of them understood. This was what humanity was, not their technology, not their ships, not their weapons. This was their heart. In the great archives of the galaxy, the entry for humanity was updated. The old description, which spoke of a young species with primitive technology and limited influence, was deleted. A new entry was written. It said, do not threaten them, do not underestimate them, and never ever make them choose between their lives and doing what is right, because they will choose what is right every single time, and they will find a way to win. Some species thought this was an exaggeration, some thought it was propaganda, but those who had seen the Battle of Prime knew the truth. Humanity was small, humanity was young, humanity was fragile. And humanity was absolutely terrifying. Because when the darkness came, when hope was lost, when every rational mind said to run and hide and save yourself, humans did something impossible. They stayed. They fought. They won. And they did it not for glory, not for power, not for revenge. They did it because it was right. The galaxy had learned its lesson, and it would never forget.